Let's talk about guitar technique today. I'd like to talk about the top 6 worst guitar technique mistakes that I encountered both with my own playing and with my students so far. Eliminating those roadblocks will greatly help you out on your guitar journey. And in today's video, I'd like to show you some very effective exercises that will help you with overcoming them as fast as possible. Let's do this. So first of all, yes, technique is not everything and there are many roads to success when it comes to playing the music that you love. But once I corrected those right and left hand technique mistakes myself, my progress basically skyrocketed. It's much easier to achieve your personal guitar goals when you're not constantly fighting your hands and your fingers. The first topic I'd like to address today is not using your left hand thumb correctly. As I'm quite sure you know already, your hands are built to grab things and your thumb is basically the most important tool for that. It gives you the optimal support for your left hand fingers when it comes to guitar playing, and amongst many other things it will help you with building a very efficient legato technique, for example. But all of that won't be possible if you're playing like this, for example. This is actually really hard to do. As you can see, I didn't use my thumb at all. It's right here. I've actually seen this way of playing with some beginner students in the past, and once this big mistake was corrected, it was obviously much easier for them to play. One less severe and actually quite divisive topic is if your thumb is allowed to stick out from behind the neck like that when you're playing. Or if it always should be positioned behind your fingers to support them. So you definitely need the support of your thumb behind your fingers for fast and technical playing like that. But for me, it's perfectly fine to focus less on perfect technique and more on the sound when it comes to string bending and vibrato. In my experience, you can't get that really expressive and emotional sound if you just work with your thumb behind the neck all the time. It also works, but it sounds and feels completely different. So I personally find myself switching between those two different styles. I place my thumb in the area around my middle finger for the fast, crazy and shreddy stuff. And it's okay for me to neglect that kind of perfect technique mindset when it comes to that kind of expressive stuff. Now here's an exercise for you that will really help you with developing that supporting thumb for your left hand fingers. By the way, you can download the tabs, get the profiles, practice backing tracks and all the other files for all the upcoming exercises on patreon.com/Bernd. I upload these really helpful files for every single video that I post here on YouTube. So you definitely want to make sure to join us over there if you want to make the most amount of progress in the shortest amount of time possible. Let's move to the next topic now. So this is obviously all about picking technique, and it was one of my personal biggest roadblocks. If you're working with your entire arm when you're picking and you completely lock up your wrist, you will encounter multiple problems. You will have issues with mastering clean string transitions. You won't really be able to feel the individual notes that you're playing or the subdivisions when things get faster. And of course, it will also be close to impossible to work with interesting dynamics if this is your default motion. It might feel like a shortcut to faster tempos in the beginning because it's easier to gain momentum when you rely on brute force. But it sounds quite terrible and I'm already a bit exhausted and I'm beginning to sweat. I obviously got much better and more controlled results as soon as I started working with my wrist for slower tempos and with a mix of my arm and wrist for the really fast and crazy stuff. But I never lock up my wrist completely and use a full arm motion like that. I don't think that this will get you the results that you're looking for. In case you still have some work to do when it comes to unlocking and using your wrist for faster tempos, I have some really cool exercises for you. Make sure to work with these really cool rhythm exercises in your next practice routine. So aside from being really effective exercises, they are also really fun to play. I actually shared these workouts a couple of months ago already, and I'm quite sure that a lot of you guys and girls missed that. If that's the case, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now so that you stay on track from now on. You might have actually missed the exercise or tip that would have helped you out greatly with your biggest guitar frustration, and by subscribing today that won't happen anymore and you will stay up to date from now on. Time for the next topic. So this is also something I personally struggled with for quite a long time. It actually took quite a while for me to realize that it's difficult for me to stretch because of the way that I'm angling my hand when I'm playing, and not because of the size of my hands or fingers. So I'm talking about really extreme angles like that, for example, or like that really stands in the way of stretching and of using your fingers effectively. A lot of my students complained that their fingers are not long enough or that their hands are not big enough to make certain stretches and to play certain shapes. And it turned out that it was actually their technique and those extreme angles that prevented them from covering more ground on the fretboard like that, for example. When I was playing that classic 2-note per string pentatonic shape in the beginning, my hand always looked like that. And that made it impossible for me to stretch farther than that. So that's the maximum stretching that I can do right now. And in order to extend this shape to a 3-note per string pentatonic shape, I would actually have to stretch this far. And now that I position my hand like that, it's actually easy to do that. If I would position my hand like that, I really couldn't make that stretch. I can't stretch farther than that. Here's a great exercise for you in case you want to improve your flexibility and the angle of your left hand. The next topic also concerns your left hand, and this one is all about finger positioning. So first of all, you want to make sure to position your finger in this area of each fret to make the notes ring out nicely. Watch what happens when I move farther back. That doesn't sound too good. So generally your notes will sound best when you position your finger close to the end of each fret. But what might be actually more important than that is the angle in which your finger comes in contact with the string and with the fretboard. A huge progress killer is what I like to call flat fingers. So if your fingers are not curled like that, they might block the next string. And that, of course, will make it impossible to play really cool and interesting chord shapes because you're constantly blocking the strings with your fingers. And amongst many other topics, you also won't be able to develop an efficient hammer-on and pull-off motion because you need that nice snapping motion in order to do that. So effectively working with hammer-ons, pull-offs, and tapping won't really work with that flat finger approach. So make sure to focus on finger positioning and developing that nice curl in your practice routine. This is the perfect and really famous exercise for that. Now let's talk about one of the biggest cliches when it comes to technical players, emotion and feel in the form of vibrato and string bending. Of course, it's extremely important to focus on hitting the right pitches with your string bending licks, and it's a very common stereotype that technical and fast players can't really do that because they don't work on it in their practice routines. So please help me with proving the world wrong with this by including this in your practice sessions. A very simple exercise that you can do in order to improve that is just playing those two individual pitches before you're bending the lower one to the higher one. So that way you can easily check if you're hitting the correct pitches with your bendings. Of course, it also really helps to practice this to a backing track because you will immediately hear if your bendings are out of tune. The same goes for vibrato. It's very common to see very excessive vibrato or barely audible vibrato and not really different dynamic levels in between. And that makes it impossible or very hard to articulate your playing accordingly to the music that you're playing over. So this probably won't be the right level of intensity for every single situation. That kind of expressive rock vibrato is awesome, of course, but it probably won't be the right choice for an acoustic guitar, ballad or anything like that. So please also make sure to focus on string bending and vibrato in your practice routines. Those are actually the perfect topics to focus on when it comes to your daily improvisation sessions. Now let's move to the last topic, probably one of the most important ones, hand synchronization. If you're not familiar with this topic yet, this is all about syncing up every single picking stroke of your right hand with the correct notes that your left hand is playing. To give you a bad example, it's very common to see stuff like that. So here I was obviously just picking kind of fast with my right hand and I was trying to match that movement with my left hand and I was hoping that it would align somehow. And it also didn't help that I was actually not playing a scale at all, I was just playing random notes. So this might fool an inexperienced listener, but you won't get away with it forever. I learned that the hard way at my first professional touring and live job when the drummer called me out and said that I wasn't really playing any actual note values. So I wasn't playing 16th notes or 16th note triplets, I wasn't really locking in with the band at all, I was just going as fast as I could. And now there's pretty much nothing more satisfying for me than hearing perfectly synchronized hands when it comes to fast licks and when the note spacing is also accurate. Here's the perfect exercise for you in case you want to work more on your hand synchronization skills. I hope that you had a lot of fun checking out these common technique mistakes with me today. And as always, I hope that I could help you out on your personal guitar journey. Don't forget to download your tabs, guitar profiles, backing tracks and all the other files for the YouTube lessons on patreon.com/Bernd by joining our community over there today. Also make sure to subscribe so that you never miss another video again. Leave a like in case you learned something new today and I will hopefully see you again very, very soon. All the best and have a lot of fun practicing until then.